Hello everybody, so welcome to another lecture for the series of Goggio lectures promoted by the Department of Italian Studies. So it's such a wonderful opportunity to continue exploring a variety of themes related to Italian culture and studies. And so we have a special guest for today's lecture. His name is Simone Di Biasio. We're very happy to have you here, Simone. Simone Di Biasio is a researcher in the Department of Education at Roma Tre University, where he teaches comparative and intercultural history of education and history of pedagogy. His work focuses on children's literature and the influence of new techniques on education. In addition to writing for academic journals, he also contributes to journals such as Doppio Zero, Link, La Letteratura del Corriere della Sera, Rivista Studio. Simone is also an author of several books, including L'Educazione e il Messaggio, l'opera pedagogica di Marshall McLuhan, Letteratura dell'infanzia, Parole, Immagini, Educazioni, del 2022, and he also is the editor of the Italian edition of Marshall McLuhan's Education in the Electronic Age, 2023. And so Di Biasio has published poetry books as well, so he's a poet, including Panasonica 2020, which won the Rainer Maria Rilke Award in 2022. So we're going to dive in a special topic today on Alberto Manzi, so please join me, welcome, with a big round of applause, our guest, Simone Di Biasio. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, hello everyone, and thank you to the Department of Italian Studies of the University of Toronto. Thanks to Professor Somigli, to Paolo Granata for inviting me to explore Toronto, and thanks to all of you to be here, and to everyone join us online from home. I'm really excited to be here at the University of Toronto. I'm really honored to talk to you about an important figure of 20th century Italy, especially when it comes from the connection between education and media. As Professor Granata mentioned, over the past few years in Italy, I've been diving deep into Marshall McLuhan works and looking at McLuhan as an educationist or a media educator at all. But today I'm fascinating to talk about this Italian teacher who around the same time McLuhan was publishing his first early books had already figured out one crucial thing. TV is the message. This famous educational TV show is today the message, and it is today my message to you. This year, 2024, we are celebrating in Italy 70 years since Italy's public TV network RAI aired its first broadcast, and at the same time, 100 years since the birth of Radio RAI and the birth of Alberto Manzi too. What I'd like to talk about today is a story of one of the most famous shows in Italian television history. So, how many of you have heard the name of Alberto Manzi? Okay, and perhaps his program, Non è mai troppo tardi, it's never too late, no? Well, Manzi's fame has actually gone beyond Italy's borders. He wasn't just the host of this program, but he also created many other TV shows, for example, shows with children and their parents, to explore the gap between generations, a TV program to learn Italian language to immigrants, but he wrote dozens of best-selling children's books in Italy and even worked as a teacher in Latin America. When Alberto Manzi was about to become the Italian's teacher on the screen, he had no prior experience hosting a TV show. However, he was very in tune with its times, and that awareness played a big role in the success of his program, and I'd say in the entire journey as Manzi, as educator. But let's go step by step. I want to begin with the historical context, Italian historical context at that time. As you know, Italy in the late 50s was still economically and socially struggling. After a crushing defeat in the Second World War, the country had begun a rapid modernization process which inevitably created pockets of poverty, pockets of illiteracy. Look at the statistics. Statistics showed that 13% of the population couldn't read or write, and only 60% had completed elementary school in 50s in Italy. And if we compare this with the rapid changes in education brought on by the pandemic in 2020, the era of Manzi also faced its own kind of pandemic of illiteracy. In both cases, distance learning was the solution. During COVID, it was virtual classrooms online, while in Manzi's time, it was virtual classroom on TV. Thanks to his program, It's Never Too Late, Non è mai troppo tardi. But let's take a closer look to at what made this TV program so innovative. Right from the start of Rai Broadcasting, the national broadcaster used TV for public service, launching a particular experiment called Telescuola, in English, teleschool. Telescuola was an educational experiment created with the Ministry of Public Education. The very first episode aired in 1958, kicked off by Aldo Moro, an important figure who was the education minister at the time, but later he'll become the Italian prime minister. The idea was simple. Help people get their elementary school diplomas or industrial-focused secondary education, all through lessons on TV that followed a full school year's curriculum. So, Telescuola brought education to places where there were no schools, in areas where students couldn't finish their secondary education because their town didn't have a school. They could follow lessons through TV. 4 hours a day, every day, just it's finally like in a traditional school, they would take their final exams. This was the first program of its kind in the entire Europe. It was an ambitious project. Television wasn't in every home yet, but Telescuola set up viewing centers or listening centers, PAT, in local schools, community halls, associations, churches. This way, students could still gather to watch the lessons and take part in the educational process, in the educational program, even if they didn't own a TV. This post quickly multiplied, and within 3 years, there were about 3,000 across the country, the entire country. Telescuola is an extraordinary initiative, and the program It's Never Too Late, Non è mai troppo tardi, comes out from this project of Telescuola. In a way, Telescuola has created the right kind of sub-oil for Alberto Manzi to emerge as a media personality. In the 60s, when Non è mai troppo tardi was launched, he was a 42 years old teacher with plenty of experience teaching in Rome. And this program became a classic, but not just in television history, but also in history of education. It helped at least 1 million Italians, mostly adults, become literate. It was a really breakthrough in visual pedagogy. The medium of television became this almost spiritual force, where people saw it as a way to break free from ignorance. This experience allowed these people to improve those people's lives, even morally, but also socially. The lesson, I think, is still valid. Literacy as a way to achieve highest social and moral condition. And the stigma of being illiterate was overcame by simple providing confidence in these people. It's never too late to learn. Manzi represented in a way a figure who became an instrument of confidence too. The message, I think, is still relevant today because it's never too late to do something to improve our condition, our situation. I want to tell you a funny story about the first audition of Alberto Manzi in Rai. Because on the day of his audition, he had a terrible cold. Alberto Manzi had a terrible cold. The Rai executives actually suggest he come back the next day. But instead of leaving, he decided to stay and to watch how the other candidates performed. And what he saw didn't impress him at all, because the other candidates were just sitting behind desks, talking. Manzi knew that that approach wouldn't work for television. Television needed something more dynamic. Manzi said something more visual. So the next day, he came prepared. He brought a flipboard, charcoals, and started drawing while he spoke. There was revolutionary. It was all about visual communication, the lesson, bringing visual ideas to life, turning ideas to tangible signs, into words. So picture this. 15 November, 1960, 6:30 p.m., early night in Italy, perfect timing after work and before dinner, Italian time dinner. The very first episode of Non è mai troppo tardi, It's Never Too Late, aired as a daily program until 1968. Its success was enormous, a daily appointment for many Italians, millions of Italians. This success was thanks to Manzi's incredible ability to communicate, sure, his creative teaching methods, and his unique personal touch. But Manzi always made sure to credit the teacher at Rai's listening posts, viewing post, PAT, who carried on with live lessons after the show. After this show, these teachers in person continued the mission. Non è mai troppo tardi wasn't just a TV show. It was part of a larger mission of Rai, helping those who were left behind, those at the margins of society. We need to take a look, I think, at the biography of our Italian teacher. Alberto Manzi was born in Rome on November 3, 1924. With the arrival of the Americans in 1944, Manzi volunteered for the San Marco Battalion, completing his service in 1945. And the same year, his daughter Alda was born from his relationship with Ida Renzi, his daughter, his wife, a teacher and children's author too. They married in 1946 and had 3 more children, but it's quite curious to note that Manzi initially graduated with a degree in biology from Sapienza University in Rome, and then he wanted to continue his studies with a degree in philosophy and pedagogy under Professor Luigi Volpicelli. Luigi Volpicelli was an important pedagogist, Italian pedagogist, was a student of the famous Italian philosopher Giovanni Gentile, and Volpicelli inspired Manzi's passion for education, particularly in marginalized contexts. However, after a year, Manzi realized that academia wasn't for him. He did quit and decided to focus on teaching instead. But the first experience of Manzi as teacher was not in a traditional classroom, not in a TV classroom, but there. His first teaching experience was in 1946-47 at the Youth Detention Center of Rome, Aristide Gabelli, near Porta Portese and the river Tiber. Here he taught 94 boys between the ages of 9 and 17, 18 of whom were illiterate. Imagine the classroom. The classrooms were bare, with no desks, no books, no chairs. 4 teachers had failed before him, but by the end of Manzi's time there, only 2 of his students returned to prison. It's an extraordinary result. Even in this tough setting, Manzi maybe found ways to innovate. The inmates start their own newspaper called La Tradotta, and the teacher earned respect, even getting into a few fights with the gang leaders to win them over. That prison is where Manzi, in a certain way, began building his identity as an educator. It was also in this setting that he started telling stories, another important part of his biography, like the adventures of a beaver, believing deeply in the power of storytelling, especially fairy tales, as a powerful educational tool. But I'll tell you more later. 10 years later, 1960, here comes Alberto Manzi stepping into Rai television studios. Do you remember when at his first audition, despite having a cold, Alberto Manzi stayed to listen and said, "We need something more alive, we need something more visual"? Our teacher of Italians, from the very beginning of the 1960s, demonstrated a deep intuition about the importance of combining text and image. As he himself stated, television is made of moving images. And if I stand still for 20 minutes speaking, I'll put everyone to sleep, Manzi said. I hope that's not happening to you right now. My solution, Manzi said, was to draw. I just had to sketch something, preferably incomprehensible at first, so that those watching were curious about the drawing that was gradually taking shape, and meanwhile followed my speech. So in this way, Manzi, as a very pioneer of television education, understood that the integration of text and image was essential to create a dynamic and engaging learning experience. I hope you are curious to see Manzi in action. So I'll show you this short clip from It's Never Too Late, Non è mai troppo tardi.
Cari amici, buonasera. Eccoci nuovamente insieme per imparare a leggere e a scrivere. Io direi però di più, per imparare a conoscere meglio il mondo e noi stessi. Adesso potrei farvi una domanda. Che cosa ho scritto? So che voi non potete leggerlo, ma proprio per questo siamo insieme, per superare questa difficoltà, questa, diciamo, limitazione che ci frena un po'. Bene, ora io cercherò di scriverlo in un'altra maniera. Guardate, comincio da questa prima parola.
He was a good illustrator too, no? The tree, the boat, the sea, the house.
Voi qui avete potuto leggerle. Perché? Perché io ho scritto per immagini. Ebbene, questi stessi segni, trino, mare, nave, casa, sono, diciamo, delle immagini simboliche anche queste. Sono dei simboli. Attraverso questi simboli noi possiamo scrivere ciò che vogliamo e possiamo leggere ciò che gli altri uomini hanno scritto.
Now let's go see behind the scene, no? We see a more or less faithful reproduction of a classroom. Sure, there is no one major difference. So the students are missing. The students were the home audience, but and I remember the audience consisted mainly of adults, including many elderly men and women from the Italian rural society that was on the verge of extinction at that time. However, this audience was not left alone. All people following the program were physically all together in the same space, like a classroom in which there was a traditional teacher. Alberto Manzi moved around all his studio classroom, using the TV studio as classroom. Then, of course, going to the blackboard, where he could showed himself to be a skilled draftsman. Manzi writes in clear letters what his drawing wanted to communicate. As you note, he spoke a simple Italian, like me now in English, with well-articulated words, although his southern accent was evident, like me, to ensure everyone could understand. During the 60s, Italian people spoke just dialects, but TV, in a way, normalized the common Italian accent. And finally, we can see the teaching technological equipment, a flipboard, a blackboard, and an overhead projector. an instrumental not only to teach reading but also writing. In this way, Alberto Manzi used to give some homeworks and to encourage his students to practice continuously at home. In another episode of Non è mai troppo tardi in 1964, it is curious to note how there is an introductory video to that episode. There is a man from the countryside who wanders around the city and looks at all the signs, street signs, posters, street names, and shop signs with a perplexed expression, because he cannot understand. He cannot read these signs. In a sense, he seems to be the ghost of that city as classroom described by McLuhan in 1977. After all, it was urbanization that demanded the need for literacy due to the need for exchanges, which are primarily verbal and linguistic exchanges. So if you go into the city in the Italy of 50s, 60s, and you come from the rural area, everywhere there are signs to codify. There is a notice from the doctor that conveys important information. There are signs to read at the bank, at the barber, at the cinema. You have to read posters. Reading is helpful. It helps us understand the reality in which we live. Manzi's work has this very practical purpose, breaking down barriers and connecting with the social fabric. Now, I want to show you another clip from a different episode of It's Never Too Late. I think it's an extraordinary historical and educational document that I would have even called literary in its ability to paint a picture of the Italian socio-cultural context of that time. Every time I rewatch it, I feel like tenderness and admiration too. This is a unique episode in the show of Rai where Manzi is not alone.
Passiamo al nostro esercizio di lettura, ma questa volta non sarò io a leggere, ma saranno proprio i nostri allievi. Sarete voi, qualcuno di voi che verrà adesso qui con me al libro a leggere. Vuole venire la nonnina?
The grandma, la nonna.
La fa già leggere. Ha 82 anni, signor Campanini. Ha imparato adesso, vero? A novembre ha cominciato i nostri corsi e ora ha imparato a leggere. Vuole leggere? E gli occhiali? Ecco, si metta a scegliere. Così? Ecco. Così tutti la possono vedere. Vuole leggere? Ecco. Cosa c'è scritto qui? C'è. Bene. Allora? No, lo legge tutto di seguito, non staccato, eh? Nella, bravo. Botte. No, guardi, c'è.
Buono vino. Nella notte c'è
Brava mia. Un lumino, ma è veramente bravo, grazie, grazie tanto. Sì, facciamo venire un altro a leggere. Chi vuol venire adesso? Chi vuol venire di voi a leggere? È veramente brava la sua nonnina, sa? Viene lei? Venga. Ecco, così. No, da qui si vede. Proseguiamo la lettura della nostra pagina.
Non c'è rosa senza spine.
Ma lei corre, legge veramente bene. Mi dica, avanti, avanti.
Non c'è monte senza, non c'è monte senza cima.
Mi dica la verità adesso. Da quanto tempo lei ha imparato a leggere?
È un mese.
Sono 2 mesi. Ossia dalla prima lezione lei ci ha seguito e ha imparato.
Sì, sempre.
Cosa posso dire io? Bravo.
Manzi is speechless.
Vuole leggere il nonnino che va a lezioni a cavallo al suo asinello, per paura di fare tardi. Vuole leggere devi tirare l'asinello.
He usually goes to lesson by donkey, his donkey.
Da qui. Venga, venga più avanti, no?
C'è una nuvola nel cielo, c'è una sposa senza velo,
C'è una.
sposa senza
No.
col suo velo.
Bene, bravissimo. Non ha fatto mai tardi lei andare a lezione?
E qualche volta sì,
È colpa di chi?
il suo mano.
Il suo mano. E perché guarda me, scusi?
So funny, but it's truly an extraordinary lesson, a clear picture of the society of that time. And put yourself in the shoes of these men and women. In a sense, they challenge prejudice too. In this case, television also becomes a tool for creating a community in which people can identify themselves and recognize their own needs. But we have, I think, another crucial question. What did Alberto Manzi think of the television medium? When asked to define what television is, Manzi calls it as an indestructible futility, given that we are in front of the video like iron in front of a magnet. The attraction is inevitable, so much so that we are able to endure even the most boring things with a patience we don't have in other cases of life. In front of the video, Manzi said, we are passive. But what is the solution? To ban TV? No one can seriously think about it. Some say that the negative effects of TV can be reduced by doing critical education, teaching children to make TV, because in this way they will automatically learn to read the television message critically, not to be conditioned. Hopes, not realities, Manzi said. What to do? Reduce the time of viewing for children and adolescents, and this can be obtained by offering different valid alternatives, such as play, sport activities, and using the TV medium as a topic of discussion to develop and compare individual opinions, to compare the information that TV gives with the coming from other sources. Integrated TV within large set of activities, integration of this medium with other activities is an important aspect of his theory of TV medium. Here, I think there is an idea drawn from a famous essay by Popper emerged. Television is not bad, but a good teacher, as Roberto Farnet titled one of his books dedicated to Manzi. Alberto Manzi was also a writer, author of children's book. And this is the second phase of Alberto Manzi. As you may remember, his first novel, Grog, was the story of a beaver, emerged from his work with the students in the Roman Youth Detention Center in Rome. and was published in 1948. This book won the Collodi Prize and has been translated into 28 languages, and in 1953, Rai produced a radio adaptation. Manzi built the story with his students in the Youth Detention Center, and it's a very particular aspect because the book is now a classic of children's book literature in Italy, but also abroad. The story tells Grog adventures, a young leader of a beaver colony living under constant threat for humans. His intelligence and quest for knowledge save the entire animal community, serving as a metaphor for the adult world and its absurd rules that lead young people to make poor choices. Another book written by Manzi, in 1955, he published Orzo Way with the Italian publisher Vallecchi. The novel won the Andersen Prize, and this book became even more successful than his first, translated into 32 languages, and in 1980, Rai adapted it into, do you remember? into a 13-episode television series. Orzo Way is the nickname of Isa, the boy who is the main character of the novel. Orzo Way means in the African Zwai's language, the found one. And Isa earns this nickname because although he has lived in this African Swazi tribe for as long as he can remember and has been fully raised within that culture, he has white skin. Isa is an outcast, someone rejected by others, and as such his main struggle is with his identity. Manzi, as always, talks about those on the margins, young people and individuals who have to fight their way through life. Why Alberto Manzi is also a writer? Because he, according to Manzi, it was necessary to tell stories again because children are losing their connection with adults. Adults often neglect children while thinking they provide everything possible. They no longer offer trust and don't help children believe in themselves. To help children grow intelligently without imposing anything, we have three essential tools: fairy tales, play, and reading. And maybe TV is as a play. I would like to conclude by discussing the third phase of Alberto Manzi. The first one, the teacher, the TV teacher. The second one, the writer. And the third one, the traveler, a man who fought for human rights. At some point, he left Italy and went to Latin America. And after this experience, he wrote another book called La Luna nelle Baracche, published in 1973, who is well known for his efforts in literacy and social justice. The book recounts his experience in Latin America, particularly in the impoverished areas where he worked with indigenous communities. This book reflects the dedication of Manzi to civil rights and to education as he helped people overcome illiteracy and support their efforts to improve their lives. Through La Luna nelle Baracche, Manzi shares story of struggle, resilience, and the need for education as a tool for liberation. And I think there is a very strong connection between Manzi the writer and Manzi the educator, and in particular between Manzi as the distant teacher and Manzi as the teacher in distant places. He taught people who were culturally very close to him and at the same time very far away. But they shared a common goal, and he used similar strategies to reach them. So, starting in 1955, after the degree in biology, Manzi traveled regularly to South America, specifically the Amazon rainforest, at the request of the University of Geneva. He was involved in a project to classify local ants. At one point, Alberto Manzi discovered the horrific reality of the Peruvian regime's use of torture against the comuneros, the local indigenous communities living in the Andes. This realization pushed him to take action, and he decided to become their teacher. For Manzi, literacy was, again, a powerful tool of liberation, a way to resist oppression and improve living conditions for this marginalized group. Thanks to his work, Manzi was no stranger to international recognition for this educational work. He first received a UNESCO award in 1965 at the International Conference for Radio and Television Organizations in Tokyo for It's Never Too Late, for the program Non è mai troppo tardi, celebrated as one of the best programs in the fight against illiteracy. In 1987, Argentine President Raúl Alfonsín tasked Alberto Manzi with developing a national literacy program based on the model of Non è mai troppo tardi, It's Never Too Late. And this program in Argentina turned out to be the best education project in South America and won the UNESCO prize in 1989. It's clear that the fame of the name of Alberto Manzi will always be connected to the success of his TV program, It's Never Too Late. However, we must remember that before becoming a TV teacher, Manzi was first and foremost maybe a teacher who opened new paths to knowledge. This means he introduced an alternative approach to teaching and social development, focusing on inclusivity. Manzi, in particular, believed that to achieve good results in education, you had to stimulate what he called cognitive tension. This is a natural need for a child or a person to ask questions and seek answers. If you think about it, this is very similar to the scientific method. You start with a question about why something happens, then you use cognitive resources and experiments to define the problem and find an answer. This answer could be a law, whether physical or social. But the pedagogy of Alberto Manzi is deeply rooted in experience, observation, and listening. Moreover, Alberto Manzi, during his experience not only in TV but also in another school in the 70s, Manzi criticized this rhythmic recitation of formulas not understood, the use of words whose meaning is often unknown, words and ideas that hide a frightening emptiness. For Manzi, the key to learning and engagement, whether for children or for adults, is motivation. The teacher's job is to bring out this natural human drive for knowledge. In fact, some scholars suggest that the word educate comes from a Latin root meaning to lead out. And there is one final very important issue I'd like to address today, because Alberto Manzi, frustrated with the rigid educational institutions, began a personal and social battle against grades in the mid-70s. In 1977, an Italian law introduced an important change in educational assessment, requiring evaluation to be given quarterly. And the idea of Alberto Manzi is to give evaluations through a stamp. The stamp said, does what he can do what he can't. When it was reported to the authorities, the judge said, teacher, you can't write this evaluation with a stamp. You're making fun of us. The following year, he wrote the evaluations by hand, but kept the same formula. When Alberto Manzi created this formula, it was another clear demonstration, I think, of his unconventional and innovative nature as educator. Rather than marking their mistakes directly, Manzi would stamp the paper, encouraging the students to correct their own errors. I want to give you a first-hand nuance of his personality, but it's the last clip. Take a look, for example, at what Manzi says in this interview conducted by Roberto Farnet from the University of Bologna, the last interview with Alberto Manzi.
Tra parentesi, non sono stato mai pagato dalla RAI, ricevevo 2000 lire a trasmissione per il bordo camicia, perché il gessetto che usavo, nero molto grasso, si attaccava al bordo, infatti avevo sempre le mani nere, zozze. Perché non ero pagato? Perché io ero un insegnante dello Stato. Il discorso era semplicissimo. Una sola volta mi hanno obbligato di non parlare di un argomento quando uccisero Kennedy e dissero se lei ne parla può dare fastidio da un punto di vista diplomatico. E io ovviamente ne parlai subito la sera.
Sovversivo proprio, sovversivo.
I've just shown you the last clip from his last interview, recorded shortly before his death, because it, I think, perfectly captures Alberto Manzi's rebellious spirit. No? These were some of the key aspects of the work, contributions and ideas of Alberto Manzi. There is still so much more, I think, to say about his legacy and much more to uncover from his papers, most of which have been digitalized and preserved by the Alberto Manzi Center in Emilia-Romagna in Italy. This center keeps alive the memory of his extraordinary figure in the history of education, not just in Italy, but worldwide. Alberto Manzi passed away on December 4, 1997 in Pitigliano, a small town in Tuscany, where he had been elected mayor 3 years earlier. His final commitment was not only to politics, but also to civic engagement, emphasizing the importance of forming responsible, informed citizens, but I'd say responsible and informed men and women. And I hope Alberto Manzi can inspire all of us. And thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Simone. Thank you all we're going to open up the floor, actually open up the classroom for Q&A. So it's never too late for some Q&As. I have prepared this. And so thank you for showcasing us such lasting legacy of Alberto Manzi and the need of literacy as a tool for liberation, as a tool for equity, inclusion. And I believe it's still relevant today. We need a new literacies, right? So media, digital literacy, AI literacy to really make sense of the reality we live in, the world we live in. So his lasting legacy is still so relevant today. So thank you for showcasing this variety of personalities, I will say, even in Alberto Manzi's rebellious character that inspired his education. I believe my colleagues, and thank you, my colleagues, for coming today, will be very happy to skip grading and marking and just using the stamp. So a tautology and rethinking grading and marking in the 21st century education. I think it will be another important topic of discussion. All right, let's open up the floor to Q&A and discussion. So,
Paolo, can I ask you something? What do you think about Alberto Manzi can be an example just right now in the era of artificial intelligence in a certain way?
Yeah.
Or no?
I wasn't prepared to the question, actually, because you are the main...
But you are the...
But if I see a connection between the new need for new literacies in an age of artificial intelligence and rethinking and reimagining education in light of this kind of technological revolution. TV was a revolution, was a technological revolution. Artificial intelligence is a new revolution we are facing today. So we need new intellectual frameworks to better understand and cope with this infrastructural transformational society. And but let's go back to the floor. Let's go back to your questions. All right, we have a question for the gentleman on the back. Please speak aloud, or should we need Daniel the microphone? All right, so I'll come in with the microphone. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Alessio. I'm a master's student here. I just have a question about, you did mention that in the post-war period, there would be a lot of areas that, were affected by poverty. And obviously that would imply that most people, or at least the majority of the population, didn't have access to a television, which means that most people would have to gather, I'm assuming, in one place and watch it all together.
Yeah.
But that would also imply that the wealthy, so the people who did own a television, were uneducated. So was the target audience everyone, including the wealthy, or was it just a matter of getting the people who did not have access to literary resources together?
Paolo, help me.
Era solo per i ricchi, era solo per la gente che non poteva permettersi la televisione, o anche per le persone abbienti che comunque avevano una televisione a casa?
The experiment of Telescuola, and it's never too late, was for everyone. But I think rich people went to school, went to traditional school, and poor people who didn't have a television, but who didn't have a school in their town, went to these places, churches, places of association, to watch together TV. So maybe it was a way to socialize, but also literacy was a way to improve the economical condition too. social condition and then economical condition, I think. So the target was, in particular, I think, the marginalized people.
Communities.
No?
Yeah, yeah. That's why I like how you emphasized the idea of education for inclusion, for facing inequalities in education. That was a great. So thank you for your questions. Next, Gather. All right, Johan.
Juan Carlos Cordero, I'm from Chile. We used to have something like this in the national television, but not the public television. It was actually the Catholic Chair Pontifical Universidad Católica. So they started something like that, but then they start giving like 50 different courses at any single level, and answering what the gentleman asked. They target not only the poor people, the people who want to learn.
This when? I didn't catch
Oh,
when.
that one was the 70 to the 90s, but I remember in my country we had from a left-wing government to a dictatorship. So the education served a different purpose, though the one given the thing was the Catholic university, no? It was a good experience in general, but with the new technology, that one went away. It's no longer on television. I created a program called Cyber Classroom TV, and it has been successful doing something similar. And my friend in universities far away, they have outreach through, to say you, a lake region in my country, to the countryside, in places like you said, like churches, community center where people went.
Right. Well, it was a comment, I
Yeah, it was
believe.
a
More than
Thank
a
you.
question. Oh, thank you.
During
Carlos.
from 70, in what period?
Yes, late 70s.
Late
till
70s.
90s. Till 90s.
And then
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
And Sylvia, good to see you again, Sylvia.
Yes,
I know.
yes.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just curious, why were children in Italy in the 1960s kept in detention? I mean, they're children. I found that shocking.
The-
Yeah, but this TV program was mostly intended for adults.
Yes, but he did teach children or in detention centers or in
right.
prison.
Oh, so sorry, the
Yes.
detention center.
Yes,
I
why
see,
were
sorry.
children, why were 9, 10, 11-year-olds kept in detention in Italy?
Cioè, se la televisione catturava...
No, perché i bambini, perché c'era un'immagine
Ah, l'immagine della prigione.
Sì.
Sì.
Why was that? Why was that? Well, why were children kept in detention? I mean, this is a social question.
I don't have the answer for this question. Youth detention center was
But they were quite young.
were commons in Italy. Yeah.
There were different kinds of detention centers, but mostly intended for reintegrating those youth after committing a sort of crime. It was a special program, let's say, education program.
But the
for those
children
youth.
in the pictures were quite young.
Yeah.
They were like 9, 10-year-olds.
Yeah. From 9 to 17 years old. Yeah. Se la domanda è perché sono in carcere,
Così piccoli.
the problem was poverty. And because of poverty, children were delinquent to survive.
Yeah, that speaks to the very complex socio-economical context of Italy.
It's a question
of Italy in the
about
60s.
the social Italian context during 50s. Yeah, it's a complex question.
Do we have another question? Giuseppe?
Yeah, Giuseppe Caffi. So my question has, I mean, I have a lot of questions, but the one thing that really stood out was you made a reference to assessment and evaluation. So the clip that you showed, the one with the, i nonni, the ones who were reading, and and he was helping them, to read. That is what assessment is usually in education is intended to be, which unfortunately not too many teachers, not too many schools really practice it, or at least used to. The sense is it's like when you're teaching a child how to ride a bike, you don't just give them a bicycle that says, well, go for it, and then come back when you got it, and then you see the results. Assessment has to do with going with the child, helping him, words of encouragement like he did, correcting mistakes when there are mistakes made. That's what assessment is all about. Evaluation is totally different. It's when you give a final grading. So I found that what he was doing is truly revolutionary for the time that he was doing it, because certainly my experience when I was at school in Italy in the 60s, in ancient times, obviously, that was not the case. And it was not the case for even here. So that's why I found it really refreshing, revolutionary that he would see that's what teaching is all about. It isn't just saying, here's a book, read it, and then come back to me when you got it. But it's a process. So I guess that's more of a comment on my part, but do you see, I guess my question now is, do you see the educational system in Italy today moving towards that, or has already moved towards that model in which there's more assessment than just, the education is just also assessment and not just evaluation?
It's a good question, but because now in Italy we have a new law approved by Parliament, a reform of the school, which reintroduce voto in condotta, I don't know in English. Behavioral mark. So I think in this moment in Italy we can see a walk in the past, maybe because of the government and the ideas of the government. But I think too that there are many singular experiments, school experiments in Italy. There are a lot of Montessori school here in Toronto, maybe more than in Italy. But teachers, Italian teachers now become more responsible of their children, of the growth of their children. And they try to build an educational system to each child, okay? And it's a difficult project because only teachers can't work alone. They need a political force, maybe a political vision of the school, of the growth. But I am an optimist about the modernization of the Italian school.
All right, and with this kind of note of optimism for building the future, it's never too late for another quick question. So, because I guess final question.
It was just about modernity. I'm Laura Innocenti.
Laura,
Nice
thank you
to
for
meet you.
coming.
And yes, I would like to remark about the modern aspect of Manzi, and for instance about I just took some notes, power of storytelling, the aspect of cognitive tension and encouraging inquiry, very important aspect, and also not to ban television. And I think that nowadays in Italy we are going back, because I'm following what happens in schools. I am a principal, and now I'm here and to promote Italian languages, because they want to ban
cell phones,
smartphones,
the use of devices, and of course I think that this is a past, like going back in the past, because of course we are talking about AI and everything, and then they say no, now you don't have to use devices at school. So of course there is you need to have rules. Since as a principal I knew that we have, but saying just banning or saying what you have done in the last 2 years about evaluation, for instance, now you have to go to change everything. This is not easy for teachers and also for parents, because they are just going to get used to the evaluation, and then we have to change. And then you say no more devices, and all the schools have got iPads and everything too. And so this was just, I don't know if you agree about.
I think one of the major difference between Manzi's era and our era is that during 50s and 60s, television wasn't in the in home for all. While now, every one of us, we all have a smartphone, a device, a technological device, and it's difficult to recognize what McLuhan called environment, digital environment, because we are all in. And maybe we need an influencer like Manzi. Or, I don't know.
All right, so thank you very much, Simone. And
Thank you.
a round of applause for such an inspiring lecture, learning from the past and looking forward to the future. So check out the Department of Italian Studies website for the next Goggio lectures. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Daniele, and all the other friends and colleagues who are here today. So, well, let's enjoy a bit of a beautiful day, and the final round of applause for Simone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.